heavily pregnant taxi driver offers a homeless and injured stranger a free ride to the hospital on a rainy night. The next morning, she wakes up to a parade of SUVs outside her house. Suited men knock on her door with a truth that alters her life forever. After 2 years behind the wheel, Cleo had seen every kind of passenger a taxi could carry. The 3 a.m. party crowds stumbling over their feet, families racing to catch flights, and guilty-looking businessmen who reeked of cocktails and bad decisions. She'd heard every story, dried more than a few tears, and learned to read people before they even opened her cab door. The yellow cab's headlights cut through the November fog as Cleo guided her taxi down the empty streets of downtown that night. Her back ached, and the baby seemed determined to practice gymnastics against her ribs. At 8 months pregnant, her night shift was getting harder. But bills don't pay themselves, right? "Just a few more hours, my love," she whispered, rubbing her swollen belly. "Then we can go home to Chester." The baby kicked in response, making her smile despite everything. Chester, her orange tabby, was probably sprawled across her pillow at home, shedding orange fur everywhere. These days, that cat was the closest thing Cleo had as a family. The mention of home brought unwanted memories flooding back. 5 months ago, she bounded up those same stairs to their apartment, her heart racing with excitement. She'd planned everything perfectly: the candlelit dinner, her husband Mark's favorite lasagna, the little pair of baby shoes she'd wrapped in silver paper. "We're having a baby, honey," she'd said, sliding the package across the table. Mark had stared at the shoes, his face draining of color. The silence stretched until Cleo couldn't bear it. "Say something." "I can't do this, Cleo." "What do you mean, you can't?" "Jessica's pregnant too, with my child. 3 months along." The candles had burned low as Cleo's world collapsed. Jessica, his secretary, the woman he'd sworn was just a friend. "How long were you cheating on me?" "Does it matter?" It hadn't really. Within a week, Mark was gone. Within 2, he'd cleaned out their joint account. Now, at 32, Cleo worked double shifts trying to save enough for when the baby arrived. "Your father might have forgotten about us," she whispered to her bump, forcing back tears as she snapped back to the moment. "But we're going to make it. You'll see." But that night, just 3 weeks before her due date, with her ankles swollen and her maternity uniform straining against her belly, Cleo encountered something different. The clock read 11:43 p.m. when she spotted him, a lone figure stumbling along the highway shoulder. Through the haze of street lamps and drizzling rain, he emerged like a ghost from the shadows of 42nd Street. Even from a distance, something about him made her pulse quicken. His clothes hung in dirty tatters and his dark hair plastered his face in wet ropes. He cradled one arm against his chest, dragging his right leg as he stumbled along the empty sidewalk. Cleo's hand instinctively moved to her rounded belly as she watched the man through the windshield. She should have been home an hour ago, curled up with Chester, who always purred against her stomach as if serenading the baby. But something about this man's desperation, the way he swayed with each step as if fighting to stay upright, made her grip her steering wheel tighter instead of driving away. In her 2 years of driving nights, Cleo had learned to spot trouble, and everything about this scene screamed danger. Through the fog, she made out more details. He was a young guy, maybe mid-20s, in what had once been expensive clothes. He clutched his right arm, and even in the dim light, she could see dark crimson stains on his sleeve. His face was a mess of bruises, one eye swollen shut. A car appeared in her rearview mirror, moving fast. The man's head snapped up, terror written across his face. He tried to run but stumbled. "Don't do it, Cleo," she whispered. "Not tonight. Not when you're 8 months pregnant." But she was already pulling over. Rolling down her window just a crack, she called out, "You okay? Need help?" The stranger jerked around, his eyes wide with fear. Sweat fused in dark crimson trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. "I just need to get somewhere safe." The approaching car's engine roared louder. "Get in!" Cleo unlocked the doors. "I'll take you to the hospital." The guy climbed in and collapsed into the back seat as Cleo hit the gas. The pursuing car's headlights flooded her mirror. "They're still coming," he panted, ducking low. "Thank you." Most wouldn't stop. Cleo's heart hammered. "Hold on." She took a sharp right, then another, weaving through side streets she knew by heart. The car behind them kept pace. "Who are they?" she asked, taking another sharp turn that made her passenger grab the door handle. "Faster, faster. They'll catch us." A second set of headlights appeared ahead. They were being boxed in. "Trust me?" Cleo asked, already turning the wheel. What? She cut through an abandoned parking lot, scraping under a partially lowered gate. The pursuing cars couldn't follow, and the gap was barely big enough for her taxi. 2 years of dodging drunk passengers who don't want to pay, she explained, checking her mirror. No headlights. Never thought those skills would come in handy tonight. The baby kicked hard, making her wince. You're pregnant, the stranger said, noticing her discomfort. God, I'm so sorry. I've put you both in danger. Sometimes the biggest risk is doing nothing. She met his eyes in the mirror. I'm Cleo. Thank you, Cleo. Most people, they would have just ignored me. Yeah, well, most people haven't learned how quickly life can change. After what felt like an eternity, they finally arrived at the hospital. Before stepping out, the man grabbed her arm gently. Why did you stop? His good eyes studied her face. The world's not exactly kind to taxi drivers these days, especially not pregnant ones working alone at night. Cleo thought about it. This morning, I watched a woman step over a homeless man having a seizure. I didn't even pause her phone call. I promised myself I wouldn't become that person. Someone so scared of the world that they forget their humanity. He nodded slowly. You didn't have to do this. Because what you did tonight, it's beyond your understanding. Cleo hesitated for a moment, her eyes meeting his. She gave a small, reassuring smile. With that, she turned and walked toward her waiting taxi. As she stepped inside, she glanced back one last time, whispering, what did he mean? The rest of the night was a blur. Cleo went home, had a simple dinner, and fed her cat. But her mind was a jumbled mess, replaying the events of the night as she drifted off to sleep. A loud rumble of engines jolted her awake from her sleep the next morning. Chester abandoned his spot on her pillow, his fur standing on end, as if he were cornered by the neighbor's dog. What is it, Chester? Cleo fought her way out of bed and froze at the window. A motorcade of sleek black SUVs, at least a dozen, lined her modest street. Men in dark suits and earpieces moved with military precision, setting up a perimeter around her house. Oh God, who are these men? Had I helped a criminal last night? Cleo gasped. A knock interrupted her racing thoughts. Peering through the peephole, she saw 3 men. One was sharply dressed in an expensive suit, another wore an earpiece, and the third was eerily familiar. No way, she whispered, recognizing the stranger from the previous night. Gone were the torn clothes and crimson stains, replaced by an impeccable suit that probably cost more than her monthly fare. She opened the door with trembling hands. Ma'am. The first man bowed slightly. I'm James, head of security for the Atkinson family. This is Mr. Atkinson and his son, Archie, whom you helped last night. The world tilted. The Atkinsons, the billionaire family whose tech empire dominated headlines. Their son had been kidnapped 3 days ago, the ransom set at $50 million. And she'd picked him up on the side of the road. They had me for 3 days, Archie explained, perched on her worn couch while Chester sniffed his shoes. When they moved me last night, I saw my chance to escape at the gas station. But they were close. If you hadn't stopped, the men pursuing you, his father added, were captured an hour after you dropped Archie at the hospital. Your quick thinking didn't just save my son, it helped us catch a dangerous kidnapping ring. Mr. Atkinson then held out an envelope. Inside was a check that made Cleo's legs go weak. Sir, this is too much. I can't. It's nothing compared to what you did, he smiled gently. Consider it an investment in both your futures, he said, glancing at her belly. No child should start life wondering how their mother will provide for them. Tears spilled down Cleo's cheeks as Chester jumped onto Archie's lap, purring loudly. There's more, Archie added, leaning forward. We want you to run our foundation's new community safety initiative. The world needs more people who aren't afraid to stop and help. People like you, Cleo. If you ever need anything, please call us, Mr. Atkinson said, handing a business card, his voice soft with sincerity and gratitude. We're forever indebted to you. Cleo smiled, and a weak thank you escaped her lips as tears of joy and relief filled her eyes. As they left, she felt the weight of the past few months lift. For the first time since Mark walked out, she allowed herself to believe things might just turn out to be okay. Cleo looked down at her belly, smiling through her tears. Heard that, little one. It looks like Mommy's night job just got an upgrade. And we did it by just being human.